right, hi everybody. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you to everybody who also joined us online as well. One moment. All right, so welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first ever Future HealthTech Leaders Innovation Challenge. My name is Olivia, and I'm with MATTER, and I've had the opportunity to work closely with HERIF and have been running this program, and will also be your MC for today. For those of you who aren't familiar, MATTER is a global healthcare technology incubator headquartered in Chicago with a mission to accelerate the pace of change of healthcare. In service of our mission, we do three things. The first is we incubate startups. Since our inception, we've worked with over 1,000 companies, supporting them with a suite of healthcare services to help them at every stage of development. Second, we work with large organizations such as health systems, payers, and life sciences companies to really help them strengthen their innovation capacity. And third, we are a nexus for people who are passionate about healthcare innovation. We produce a lot of programs, including large-scale events like the one today, and smaller forums exclusively for our members. We've been fortunate enough to partner with HERIF for this crucial initiative, and I'd now like to welcome Dr. Mahajan with HERIF to say a few words.
Thanks, Olivia. Welcome, everyone. I'm Raj Mahajan. I'm an internist geriatrician, and I am founder and the board chair for HERIF, our foundation. And I would like to thank our staff here that were able to find parking and be here on time. Not naming any names, who just walked in. Emily, our director of development, Dan, our executive director. Thank you very much for putting this together. And good luck to all the participants. May the best one win. And so they say talk is easy, right? So you're all pitching today ideas, and I remember coming here as a grad student back in 2018, and so I know how it feels to be where you are, and finally also. So you got to put your money where your mouth is. So if you see just 8 miles west of here, for folks that are from Chicago, the life expectancy falls like 20 years. And so it's very important. When we started over a decade ago, we wanted to have some healthcare clinics in those underserved areas. And as we did that, we realized clinics will probably serve one patient at a time, but if you could somehow also inspire people and do innovation and education, probably you can have more people come up and help you with the mission. And we actually have put our money where our mouth is, so we are going to help people who truly mean that they will bring healthcare to those who need the most. And Emily asked me a question about how do you really determine that diversity and also that underserved people are getting what they need. And my answer was long-winded response where you know it when you know, and so and that's what we're going to check today. Who really means to bring healthcare to people who need. So again, without further ado, Olivia, thank you for the opportunity, and this competition hopefully is one of the many coming for us to support people that are there to help people who need the most. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mahajan. So to tell you a little bit more about the program, we worked with a cohort of 5 startups. They went through exclusive workshops and also received mentorship from MATTER and also HERIF. The 5 finalists you're going to hear from today are actively working to improve areas of health equity, or health inequity, and also improving care outcomes. So to tell you a little bit about how today's session is going to work, our 5 finalists will come up and deliver 7-minute pitches to our panel of judges. Following each pitch, our judges will have a collective 5 minutes to ask the finalists questions on their solution. Once we conclude the pitches, Dr. Ige, Commissioner of the Chicago Department of Public Health, will deliver a keynote on addressing health equity through innovative strategies. While you're all listening to Dr. Ige's keynote, the judges will move to a separate room to deliberate. And then once the keynote is over, we'll come back, announce the winner, and invite everyone here for refreshments for an in-person networking session. Before we get to the pitches, I'd like to welcome our esteemed panel of judges to introduce yourselves, starting with Pete McNerney.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me now? All right. I'm Pete McNerney. I'm an adjunct professor of healthcare at Kellogg here at Northwestern. I teach courses on healthcare entrepreneurship. I started this after I'd retired. I was in the healthcare venture capital business for a long time, both here and up in Minneapolis. And I'm on the board of MATTER, and they were nice enough to invite me here. I should also mention I'm on the board of Access Community Health, which is the largest network of FQHCs here and federally qualified health centers here in Chicago. And they have clinics in a lot of these neighborhoods that was mentioned, and it's certainly easy to see the need through that lens. So I commend all of you and look forward to your presentations.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily Herrera, and I am the Development Director. I am very excited to be here today. I've been sneaking in on some of your online courses and mentorships, so to finally get to this day and be able to have it conclude and really answer some of those important questions that Dr. Mahajan just mentioned, I'm very excited to hear what you guys are all coming up with. So good luck to everyone, and thank you.
Hi, I'm Frank Nash. I'm the CTO of Simpar and REA, which are the umbrella organization over HERIF. And I've been in healthcare IT my whole career, worked for large companies, startups, had an exit, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about all of your different products and things like that. I'm excited because there's not one that I've seen in that is an overlap. You're all in different segments of the market, and which is like when I look at healthcare, there's a lot of different problems that are in healthcare, and I think you're all addressing some very interesting areas in healthcare. So I look forward to hearing from you guys today.
Sorry. Good afternoon. My name is Nancy Sullivan. I am the CEO and Managing Director of a venture capital arm for the University of Illinois. I focus in health tech and biosciences in my area. We are deeply dedicated to access. In fact, UIC, our hospital system here in Chicago, does quite a bit in the access area, and I work closely with our cancer center that has done national work around finding the areas that access needs to be addressed. So commend what you're working on and really excited to hear about it. Thank you.
Thank you, judges. So without further ado, we have our first presentation from Bronwood Bridges with PragmaClin.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Nice to see everybody in person, and for those joining virtually, it's always nice to see faces. I've been saying that all day today. My name is Bronwyn Bridges. I am the CEO and co-founder of PragmaClin, and I am also a PhD pharmacy candidate at Memorial University. For those who don't know where that is, I am currently located on an island in the Atlantic Ocean called Newfoundland and Labrador. So I've come to you here today from Canada to share a little bit about what we've been working on. But before I tell you where PragmaClin is today, I would like to introduce you to Gord. He was an avid runner his entire life until his 50s, where he noticed his gait and slowness occurring. He brushes it off as age-related symptoms, as many people do, to avoid the emergency room. And then a few years later, he starts to have trouble with his balance and shaving in the morning. When he finally goes to seek help, he is told it could be a 1 to 2 year wait time to see a neurologist for a diagnosis of something. That wait time where we are now exceeds 4 years. So when we talk about health access and equity and being able to reach doctors when you need them and get the help that you need and deserve, we definitely have a lot of those problems on the island of Newfoundland and Labrador. But as we started to do a lot of customer discovery, we realized that these problems exist in a lot more places than we even imagined. Parkinson's disease itself is mostly noticed by tremor, gait, slowness. It's typically the motor symptoms that people attribute it to, especially the tremor. However, a lot of these symptoms actually have started to progress for years prior to. Cognitive function, sleep issues, any types of decline that you may not actually be able to see are an important piece of getting to an earlier diagnosis or post-assessment treatments so that you can better educate the patient, but also then provide more accurate titrations of medications and physical therapy. So although we do see the motor symptoms of being a big piece, we wanted to make sure we were tackling the at-home non-motor portion as well. Gord that you saw there is now one of the 10 million people who have been subjectively diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and is only seen once a year for a follow-up. Like many others, he also does not have access to a movement disorder specialist, meaning that he is receiving less than optimal care. And so at PragmaClin, we've created what we call PRIMS. PRIMS is a clinical decision support tool that provides real-time motion captured assessments from within the clinic. We have patients stand in front of the system, and from there, they are self-guided through a series of tests. These tests take an average of 10 to 11 minutes, depending on the technical abilities, and could be performed alone. However, we do typically have a nurse, physio, or other staff member with them while they're doing it. What this does mean, though, is that they don't have to attach any sensors to the body. They're able to run through this full clinical assessment, which is actually the standard for assessing, diagnosing, treating, and caring for Parkinson's patients. But it typically doesn't get done in the office setting because of the time that it takes and how subjective it currently is. So we're trying to change that by being able to show that comprehensive, accessible data and notifications for trends, history over time, past assessment checkups, but also be alerted to rapidly changing symptoms through our AI algorithms, red flags, that we can track with a patient. Current practice right now is to write down a series of reports and then have to sift back through that a year later to show how the patient's progressed, use half of the assessment to go over past results, and then start from current. And what we're looking to do is really bridge the gap between those assessments and possibly be able to have patients in more frequently to these local facilities. Our algorithms in the back end right now, we currently have 10 scored algorithms that are set and ready to go with an 85% accuracy that is built over 900 points of data to get us there through patients. We currently, though, have 62 clinical assessments, meaning that we've had a neurologist or movement disorder specialist running through this with our patients in our local physio clinic and also at the University of Cork in Ireland and with King's College Dubai. We also have an option for weekly surveys at home. It's a possible additional revenue that we can look at into the future, but this actually came out of a pain point that we had felt from clinicians and patients, but a lot of caregivers who stated that they felt as though the person that they were caring for was not giving necessarily the accurate assessments when they were going into the doctor. They said that they either felt better or felt worse than the caregiver happened to notice they were feeling. So we introduced a mobile app that could be done from the patient's home or local areas in which they can then track these non-motor symptoms such as that sleep problem, cognitive function, and more. This integrates into the platform for the motor assessments in which we plan to have in not just those urban centers for improved efficiency to see a specialist, but we're looking to have these in those local clinics. We currently have it in a physio clinic who is out of the way and doesn't typically get the traffic flow from the urban areas and is a way that patients who don't currently get seen by a neurologist to go in and get those follow-up assessments. What makes us different, though, is that we're actually not a wearable, so a value prop that we have is not being attached to the body, which is a big, difficult piece that we've seen in a lot of customer discoveries. The access of the population we're looking for is typically over 65 and can sometimes have those cognitive issues, as I mentioned, and so we're looking to have it as that the patient is able to just stand there, be guided and prompted with those animations through the tests, and it is that self-run 10-minute assessment following the clinical standard. Most of our competitors in this space are typically using it as an at-home solution only and not following the clinical practice for standardization, meaning that the practitioners that we're talking to are saying that it provides a lot of pain points that they have to go over more excessive data on fewer symptoms. Our IP strategy is that we currently have a provisional patent filed with our date coming up to file our full PCT, but we have our trademarks for PRIMS and PragmaClin, and all of this has been funded by the Canadian government to this date. With our regulatory strategy we're now working on as a software as a medical device under clinical decision support tool, we've completed our pre-sub meeting and had great feedback. Now we're looking to really capture that data over the next 12 months in the US market so that we can get to market by 2026. And our business model is those hospitals, healthcare systems, and private clinics, as well as down the road pharmaceutical companies who are completing phase 3 trials on new drug discovery, but also housing our IP within PragmaClin to monetize on our database and provide better insights later on as well. That pathway, like I said, we see options for the rural patients to go to local facilities. We see them to come in and not be seeing a neurologist, but still be getting an assessment. And we see deep dives with neurologists as well. And with 200,000 neurologists and an average subscription based off of existing billing codes, 96116, which is allowing us to capture those motor disease assessments, we know we can scale to MS, Huntington's, stroke, and more in the future. We've leveraged $2 million in non-dilutive government funding and done accelerator programs across the globe to help us get here, as well as world partnerships we're trying to create with King's College, Cork, and Maine Health. Growing out the team of myself, my co-founder, as well as our tech lead and regulatory expertise, we're looking to get to market, like I mentioned, by 2026, knowing we need those KOLs, though, to get there, including Ray, who said this will help to optimize his treatment strategies and provide better end-to-end care for him and his patients. The next stage then we're looking for as an ask, and for everybody in the audience, is connections to neurologists or other movement disorder assessors through research facilities, so we can get through our regulatory clearance, as well as patients who are willing to talk to us for customer discovery. And with that is our raise to hire that clinical lead to see out through regulatory approvals and reach the market. So we hope that you'll join us. Welcome to PragmaClin. Thank you.
I'm happy to start. So, whoops. I have a couple questions. First of all, is the product finished? Have you validated it, the software? You're ready to go into clinicals, right?
Great question. No.
Okay. So what
I was saying yes, but no. It was a great question.
What needs to be done?
Yeah, we need to complete the validation trials. So to date, we've just been doing data collection trials where the system is in the clinic. We have assessors who are helping to build out the scoring mechanisms. And now our next phase that we actually just started in August with Cork was the first one to kind of take off, is to validate that. So the comparison of accuracy between neurologists and our system for the regulatory approval. We're looking for 3 sites.
And when you met with the FDA, what did they tell you they were going to require in terms of clinical data?
Yeah, because we have our data sets already built up and then some past work on how that's been built, the actual regulatory submission for our full submission is 3 sites across the US. 1 can be external, but it has to match the population diversity of the US. And sadly, our partners that we have don't kind of match the full diversity. So we are looking for 3 sites, and there are 40 patients per site.
Kick off the because
Hello. Okay, there we go. Okay, not being wearable. So when we were doing the discovery with the neurologists in this space, and I had that kind of unique value proposition of being the PhD student who could attend conferences and learn the insights from them, a lot of those wearables are A, really expensive, and B, because of the, like I said, the end user, they really struggled to kind of get them on because fine motor skills is one of the first pieces to go. So it then required a lot more help. But the continuous monitoring is really an at-home portion that provides this excess data on typically only a couple symptoms. So you might see it for gait and walking, tremors, typically some of the top ones, but it doesn't cover the spectrum of all of the symptoms, which there's over 35 of them. And so what they found was it was only specific for certain patients. If you didn't have a tremor, well, then it didn't really matter if you were wearing this at home because it wasn't capturing what that was. Because it looks so different for every individual, a lot of that is to track more of on or off states of medications, which, like I said, are really specific to a certain condition and how it's progressing. Whereas we're trying to capture, we know everybody has clinical assessments, we know they have to do this series of tests, and so that was a bigger, say, market push that way. But then also in terms of it's only on one wrist typically in order to be at home unless you're strapping a whole lot of things on you. And because it's on one wrist, you actually wouldn't have Parkinson's if it was the exact same on both sides of the body. So having it on one wrist and not having it on the other isn't going to capture the same amount of data as it should for both sides, which is why in the clinical trial setting, they actually strap one on both wrists and one on the waist, which doesn't work so well at the home setting. So we're trying to kind of play with the soft spot of being in the clinic, but in the rural settings and following that practice.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Yeah, no.
I should have known. Yeah. Great presentation, by the way. So can you tell me a little bit about the camera assessment combination and what are you doing there, which seems like it'd be a little distinct from something that'd be done in the home?
Great question. A lot of people ask if this can be done from like a webcam. So right now we are using 3D body tracking cameras, and that was because of accuracy testing. When we first did, we talk about how many testing we've done. We did a usability test on that type of camera, and the calibration was not good enough to be able to capture some of the fine motor details we were looking for. So we went with 3D. In terms of that, though, we have iterated a lot over a lot of in-house and out-of-house testing to find out what the best setup would be to use the least hardware possible, because we really want to focus on the software component. But then it allows us to possibly be integrated into other solutions that are already out there and already exist with 3D cameras. So trying to keep our software as one segment that's not reliant on specific cameras and really just on 3D data to use it that way in the market. I hope that answers kind of the question that you're looking for. Perfect.
Have you thought about how we get this product to those most in need?
Yes, great question. We started one kind of pilot idea that we've been working with Parkinson's Canada about having that mobile app, and is there some of the tests that we can do from there that they can do from their phone? It would be the same. We've looked at that so that we could increase access because they have the same issue in a lot of those rural and remote settings. But when it comes to the actual clinical piece, we've thought about how can the system be moved, how can it be placed, and where does it make sense? And so what we're trying to do is navigate the regulatory piece with the billing piece and who pays. But in the US, for example, if you were to place this into a local clinic, local facility where there is no neurologist, can we still do that assessment? Can it still be run, or does it have to have a neurologist there? And that's something that the billing piece we're working through with consultants is a little bit difficult, but in terms of if it didn't need to be billed and it could just be an assessment that is able to track the data for that, it could fit into those facilities. And we've tried to really do a lot of usability on how we can have less hardware and less of a setup so it makes more sense in the smaller areas. Similar to if you went to Shoppers and did your blood pressure check, is there a way to do it? I say Shoppers, that was very Canadian of me, I'm sorry. How you do it with CVS, Walgreens, you can check your blood pressure. Is there a way when they come in for their medications, can they do an assessment while they're waiting for that?
Who does pay?
Who does pay? Wow. Well, I tell you, the U.S. has the most complicated healthcare system. Yes, I see you, Olivia. And so, great question. Having those existing billing codes is about motor assessments. And so, the way we've positioned version 1 is software subscription that the hospital buys per year, and it's based off of how many patients they have and how much revenue, so it's a lot about ROI. We've actually been working with an ex-Anthem actuary to figure out the ROI models in a couple different pathways, because it is very confusing here. But the answer is the hospitals or clinics would pay us and would ultimately make their money back in those billing codes that exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Bronwyn. Up next, we have Angel Enriquez with Emboa Medical.
Hi everyone, my name is Angel Enriquez. I'm CEO of Emboa Medical. And today I have some unfortunate facts to share with all of you. And that is that ischemic stroke is a devastating condition. This is when there's a blockage that stops blood flow into the brain's arteries. And once the blood stops flowing, the clock starts ticking. This is where the notorious phrase of time is brain comes from. Every 40 seconds, someone suffers from a stroke. That's almost 800,000 Americans each year. And not only that, Black, Indigenous people of color are 2 times more likely than white adults to suffer from first-time stroke. Every minute in this lack of blood flow state, 2 million neurons die. That's the equivalent of aging 3 weeks per minute. This could mean losing your ability to walk, talk, or even sustain function. Stroke is not only significantly impactful in mortality, it is also an immense contributor to the United States healthcare costs. Fortunately, surgeons have tools at their disposal to be able to remove the blood clot causing stroke. This is known as mechanical thrombectomy. One strategy is the stent retriever, which uses these tiny metal structures to pull in the blood clot. Unfortunately, these structures can damage the thin and fragile blood vessel walls, therefore having a higher complication rate. Another strategy is using an aspiration catheter, which tries to ingest or suck in the blood clot. This is generally a safer, faster, and more cost-effective procedure. But the problem here lies that as you go deeper and deeper into the brain, you need a smaller sized catheter, and this significantly impacts the forces available to remove the blood clot. So Emboa has identified this as an opportunity to innovate in the field and has developed TRAP, or the Thrombus Retrieval Aspiration Platform. Here we have a biomimetic construct that is able to create an additional force that is not available before and is independent of catheter size. Our proof of concept consists of a polymer insert with rows of teeth that are preferentially aligned to let blood clots go in, but passively trap them once they are engaged with aspiration. Our design draws inspiration from a boa constrictor's teeth arrangement, where they're able to grab onto prey and not tear through the tissue. So we've applied this design principle to our clot-trapping microstructures to be able to better grab onto the blood clot and not necessarily tear through it. Additionally, we have a lattice structure to increase flexibility and compliance as we travel through the brain's blood vessels. We've been able to quantify the advantage that TRAP provides, and we can see an almost 3 times increase in force when compared to a conventional, smooth inner diameter catheter. Now, to put this into context, what this means is that we're easily able to lift this 50-gram weight, whereas the conventional catheter cannot. Now, the best outcome is when the surgeon is able to remove the blood clot causing stroke in the first attempt. This is known as first pass effect. Here, we've created a very challenging neurovascular model using a high friction environment, and we saw that TRAP can achieve first pass effect 4 out of 10 times in this worst case scenario compared to the control catheter, which is the conventional one, which is 1 out of 10 times. Now, what this means is that we are able to shorten the times that the patient is in an ischemic state, therefore saving precious neurons, as well as time in the surgery room. In the clinic, the FPE right now is 30 to 40%. Emboa's goal is actually to reach greater than 70% to be highly impactful in this field. We are uniquely positioned to have higher extraction force or blood clot removal force compared to conventional aspiration catheters, yet have a lower risk profile when comparing to stent retrievers. The thrombectomy market is rapidly increasing with a CAGR of 6.8%. We're targeting the smaller vessel occlusions known as medium vessel occlusions, or MEVO, and this market is $1.1 billion, but we can easily extend to all of the neurovascular thrombectomy market, which is $2.4 billion. Additionally, I would like to highlight some exits in the field where bigger, more established companies continue to acquire novel and disruptive technologies. We also have other market verticals that require thrombectomy, such as pulmonary embolisms and deep vein thrombosis. As I mentioned, our target market is indications for use targeting MEVO. We have a competitive advantage where we have higher forces at a smaller scale. Our customers are the hospitals and other stroke centers that are willing to purchase our device with a market penetration strategy of having KOL feedback, presentations at conference, as well as publications. Now, our funding opportunities, there's many non-dilutive ones. We're also seeking dilutive investments, as well as a potential future exit. And we foresee an FDA 510K regulatory pathway. We have the ideal team to take this technology to the next level. This was a passion project of mine during the PhD, and I sidetracked my career in academia to focus on getting this technology to patients. We have 2 neurointerventional surgeons with more than 30 years of experience, having already co-developed and commercialized other neurovascular technologies. And our CTO is a medical device research expert, having been already successful in other research ventures. At Emboa, we also care about addressing the inequities in stroke. Here you can see a map of the stroke death rates and the percent of population distribution living in poverty in the US. You can see significant overlap. Additionally, white patients are more likely to be evaluated by a stroke team when compared to black patients, and there is also an increased gap in time to treatment to minorities. Our corporate social responsibility mission therefore revolves around increasing and promoting awareness of stroke and how to identify it. We'll partner with our clinical collaborators and make sure to present this to other underserved communities. Additionally, we see partnering with organizations such as the Kentuckiana Stroke Association to increase the awareness of the health disparities affecting stroke. Our young company has gained relevant traction so far, and we've gained almost $200,000 in non-dilutive funding, and we have a Freedom to Operate report stating that we are cleared to operate in the space. We have a proof of concept that is a works-like prototype, and we're currently developing more physiologically relevant tests to further differentiate ourselves preclinically. By the end of the year, we see ourselves using our proof of concept model to develop an animal model and establish preliminary safety and efficacy in vivo study. Additionally, we've partnered with MIS, a contract manufacturer, to further develop our functional prototypes. And we foresee a FDA pre-sub to establish a clinical trial, as well as strategic partnership contact so that we can have a future exit. We foresee an FDA 510K regulatory clearance or application by the end of 2027 with established predicate devices. For now, we're asking for a pre-seed round to fund phase 1 prototyping and establish that in vivo preclinical model to further differentiate ourselves. At Emboa, we are aiming to increase the first pass effect to improve stroke patient for all patients. Thank you.
I can get started. Oh, are you set? Mine was more about, it looks like from the end slides, I was waiting to hear a little bit about maybe some in vivo data in animal models. And it looks like you were going into porcine.
Yes.
Are you skipping mouse models, or can you talk us about any in vivo data that you have on this?
So we can't use mouse models because their arteries are significantly smaller, and we know for a fact that the porcine models have been validated for this type of stroke, and so they have similar sized arteries for that.
So you have to go direct to porcine. There's nothing in between that you can simulate?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we are using a simulated blood model of pig blood and using neurovascular models that are FDA guided, so that way we can do it benchtop before using an animal model per se. Yeah.
So it looks like you don't really have competition for this. You would have your own patent for this type of structure, or how do you stop the competition from coming in?
Yeah, so there is definitely competition. Like, there are players that are trying to develop devices for this medium vessel occlusion space, which is a smaller vessel occlusion. And what we're trying to do here is really developing novel structures. So our whole special sauce is that we've done so much testing on the structures themselves to understand where the gripping aspect is and increasing those blood clot removal forces versus not. And so our patent revolves around that design.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you finalized your design, first of all?
We are currently still developing, and it also depends on the manufacturing strategy that we provide, that we get. So we have a proof of concept that we've made in the lab.
Yeah,
But
well, when you say proof of concept, what did you do to conclude that this concept has been proved?
So we've shown the tests where we're measuring the forces, as well as trying to use a neurovascular model to remove the blood clots.
Got it.
And we've
So-
ssome additional
Lab
forces.
model.
Yeah.
And one other question, FDA, why have you concluded this is a 510K and not a PMA?
So it's a 510K because our indications for use are similar to those products that have already been commercialized, and therefore we're going to prove similar substantial equivalence in safety and efficacy as those predicate devices.
Have you spoken to the FDA at all?
So not to the FDA, but we have had regulatory consultants provide the strategy, and they've mentioned the 510K is the way to go.
I have a follow-up for you.
Yeah.
Then. Do you see interventional radiologists using this when it's in use in clinic? And talk to us how it's used in clinic, and then have you spoken to them about how their adoption would look and what they're willing to do?
Definitely, definitely. So we have 2 neurointerventional radiologists in the team that have explained to us, right, the procedure and been able to understand where a patient comes in, they have stroke symptoms, some drooping in the face or non-functionality on one side, and then they go into a CT scan which injects contrast through the vasculature, and they're able to locate if there is an occlusion. Now at that point, you try to use medication to bust the clot, but that's 30% effective most of the time then. So the other 70% needs to have this procedure being done to them, try to go in and physically remove that clot. And so what we're seeing, what we're trying to address is that when you go into these smaller blood vessels, there is just a very limited amount of force, and it's a very fragile environment. And we're hoping that with this device, surgeons have a better tool for that.
How does this improve health equity?
That is a great question. So what we're proposing is that we know that there are inequities in the treatment of stroke. And I think by being aware of this as a company, as we continue, we're hoping to partner with institutions that are also aware of this, and will create initiatives to try to improve health equity in this way.
And so real quick, so what it looks like your ROI would be in here is because you are going deeper into the inside the
Vasculature, yeah.
Thank you. Because, and then that causes a more complicated condition. That's the difference in there. That's where you would get your ROI at that point.
Yes, we see ourselves as an additional tool that surgeons will finally have to be confident that they're not going to cause more trouble and have the force needed to remove blood clots. So it's not necessarily just for the brain. As I mentioned, it can also be used for peripheral type of procedures.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Malvina Del Salvo coming for Plateful.
Hello, I am Malvina DeSalvo, CEO and founder of Plateful, where we help busy parents ensure their children eat their greens with no pushback. This is my daughter, Isabella. She was born premature, 10 weeks, 1 pound, 12 ounces. And when we reached solids, we really were struggling. I couldn't get her to eat to save my life. It was getting so bad, we were going to the pediatrician every month just for a weight check. And at the time, the recommendation was a calorie-dense diet full of saturated fats and highly processed foods just to get her weight up. As a person who struggled with my own weight, I had not introduced a processed food to her at this point, but feeling so embarrassed and ashamed at my inability to grow my child and feed my child, which is a basic function, I followed the recommendation. Chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, cased meats, fried foods. Went on for weeks until her weight rose and the pediatrician recommended going back to a regular diet. But if I've been feeding you that diet for weeks on end, do you think I could get you to eat a grilled piece of chicken or some roasted vegetables? My problem was now exacerbated. Parents are busier than ever, shuffling their kids to practices, and 2 parents working outside of the home, and fast food available at every corner, but the nearest grocery store is more than a mile away. This has lent the U.S. to $730 billion on modifiable health risk spend, with 50% of parents citing having a picky eater, and 29% of parents making 2 or more meals at dinner time. Parents are stressed, 77% citing mealtime as a source of the stress. And with the best of intentions, buying vegetables that no one eats that get tossed to the tune of $240 billion annually. Out of our customer discovery, we've done 2 parental focus groups, surveyed hundreds of people, and interviewed dozens of people. 68% worry about their child's habits. 55% graded their child's habits as at a C or lower. 33% of them were worried about growth concerns. 29% consulted an expert, and 33% purchased tools. 99% agreed health was important to them, and 59% said they'd buy Plateful if it was ready today. Plateful seeks to help with picky eating and prevent lifestyle diseases by gamifying nutrition education. We reach children earlier, right when habits are starting to form. We provide parents with tools and education to shortcut the development of healthy habits. So what is Plateful? We're an app with animated learning modules. We educate children from seed to body system. They learn how food is grown and harvested from cultures around the world, how it travels to meet them at their plate, and what it does for their body system to fuel their activity. We take the learning to the dinner table. Our smart food plate lights up, talks to, and engages kids while they're eating. It recognizes when veggies go untouched and responds in real time. It tracks macronutrients and shares that data with our app, where parents can get rich insights on how they're doing, with tips and recommendations to improve the diet. Compared to our competitors, we offer an end-to-end solution with our engaging content, our smart food plate. And compared to going to seeing a specialist every week with a $50 copay every week to get some nutrition help, we're quite a bargain. Our hardware retails for $100, replacement tops for $10, and a subscription model $4.99 to our app. We believe we have a B2B play here as well, looking to possibly be flexible spending dollars approved. We're not opposed to DME approval if that's a pathway for us as well, but looking to partner with providers and health plans as either a supplement or addition to their clinical practices, or for those with socioeconomic challenges who can't afford to go see providers every week or even monthly or quarterly. We plan to go direct to consumer as well as that B2B model. Looking to leverage our existing network of mom groups and subscribers. We'll scale that nationally. We're looking to develop partnerships with places like Nourish Ed, WIC, and SNAP. WIC and SNAP, part of their requirements and mandate is to provide nutrition education. Today, that's more pamphlet. So we're looking to also engage there to provide pathways for those who can't afford through retail channels. Leveraging our 15 years in the healthcare industry, we'll look to get FSA approval. And then leveraging in our advisory board, we have a previous VP of sales at Oral-B with extensive relationships with Walmart and Target to help us to gain entry. This is a $258 billion industry. There are 2 billion children globally, age 0 to 5, and we'd like to focus on the US market first. And really our beachhead is, so we'll start with picky eaters to help us gain into market. We see ourselves as, helping support global initiatives, caring for our planet, the people in it, touching on several sustainable goals through our learning modules. We've graduated several elite accelerators, done a ton of customer discovery. We have working prototypes of our hardware, software, and learning modules. We've expanded our team and advisory board and have had deep talks with several health organizations. Remaining year, we'll focus on pilot testing. We're ready to kick those off, looking to work with families as well as possibly daycares. We do have a PhD researcher out of Northwestern University who's done extensive research on food selection in children. So we'd like to provide her one of our prototypes to get an objective case study completed. We see that as 3 out of 5 dentists recommend Colgate, but hoping some scientific backing will help us get ready for our pre-seed round. We're looking to raise $1 million to help us get manufacturer ready. And do those key hires to move from those prototypes to that. I am Elvina DeSalvo, CEO and founder. Collectively, we have over 70 years of experience in health tech, CPG, food tech, and manufacturing, making us the right team to bring this to market. Extensive experience in healthcare, USDA, and manufacturing, collectively raising over $300 million. Help us change future health and investment in Platefuls and investment in children. Thank you. All right.
how does this work? I mean, I sign up and I have a child, and there's an iPad. So what are they looking at, and how does it impact their diet?
Yeah, so we're not just an app. Our app has the animated learning modules. So a big component of picky eating or fear-based is something new, something unexplored. So by providing children that level of education and that level of scope of understanding that this came from 10,000 miles away, this avocado came from Mexico. This is what Mexico looks like. This is what the culture of the people there are. And seeing all the level of lift to get it there, and then the understanding of what it does for your health system. So when we target kids as early as 6 months, we're reaching them as they're starting their solid food journey, and we're fostering developing eating for health as opposed to eating for taste. So really engaging them early. And then our hardware component is actually a smart food plate. So it talks to them, works with them while they're at the dinner table. So we're coupling therapy and practice. So every meal we're engaging them, we're tracking what they're eating. If they're not touching that vegetable, we'll replay audio from those learning modules. We light it up, we're gamifying it. After each learning module, they get a little bit of quiz, collect coins for every right answer, and unlock additional learning modules. So really trying to engage them.
And you have some data to show that this actually helps them, impacts their taste?
So according to published research, giving nutrition education, nutrition literacy is the primary indicator of healthy habits to begin with. But when you're talking about families with 2 working households, or that's if you're fortunate to have 2 adults in the household, that's just falls to the wayside. You're trying to raise good people. So a lot of times my generation and on don't worry about eating habits. They subscribe to fed is best because there's just no bandwidth to do that. When you're talking about raising good people, teaching values, you have got a limit of what you can work on. They want their kids to eat healthy, but they just give up and give the chicken nuggets and the PB&J. So really what we're looking to do is take it off their hands completely. You tell us what you're serving, tell our app does the learning modules, our app works with them at the dinner table. We'll give you talking points, but really helping you do that lift.
Great presentation, by the way. So how do the plate talks to the app, and if they finish a section of their portion of their food, it talks to that and says you finished your vegetables, but you didn't. Thank you. I just want to make sure I was clear there.
Yeah.
So how do you measure success, that they finished their plate? Like what's the algorithm that's kind of going in behind there to give them feedback?
Yeah, so we have some AI and ML components within our app and within the hardware. So we're not looking to decide for you what a portion is for your child. Every child is different, every child's size. You got a 6'2", 6'5" parents. What we are doing is focusing on macros and ensuring that you're trying to get those increased proteins, vegetables. But if we are not touching that vegetable, we recognize it. Our hardware sends data back and forth the entire meal time, and we engage new technology that'll say, okay, they're not touching their vegetable, let's light it up, let's talk to them there. If they're only touching the carb, we'll turn it red and try to get them to move on to another section.
Got it. And that you were leading into where I was going, that was portion sizes, different kids, right?
Right.
And then age. And it sounds like you were talking about like 6 months.
Yeah.
And then what's your upper range, and how do you sort of adjust for that from a tech standpoint?
Question. Yeah, we're initially targeting 6 months to age 5, but I think future state we can go well beyond that. But if we can engage them as early as a solid introduction, we're preventing those bad habits, right? If you're coming to us at 3 or 4, we're looking to break those bad habits. But with that AI and ML, it'll unlock additional learning modules. The content changes, right? So 6 months to even a year and a half, you might be learning your colors, and by identifying the foods, learning what chicken is, learning what beef is, learning what broccoli is, and then learning the food groups. And as they age up, the nutrition literacy gets more complex.
I think you mentioned a little bit about this, but I may have missed it. So can you tell us again where you're placing this? And again, how are we making sure that those most in need are getting this service?
Great. Say that for the first part again. Where am I placing it?
Yeah, because I think I saw a couple of
The
places
go-to-market
that,
strategy? Mm-hmm. Yes, so wonderful. We do have a direct-to-consumer market retail for those who with it, the economic means to do so. We certainly do not. We are forefront of health equity and wellness. So we're looking to partner with companies like Nourish Ed, WIC, and SNAP. All of those programs require a nutrition literacy component. So you have grocery programs that those within disparity households go to get their groceries, but they're required to give nutrition literacy. Today, it's just a pamphlet at best, so we're looking to partner with them to supplement and replace their current nutrition literacy offerings. Because we also have the B2B play with health providers, we think we can go to health plans and become flexible spending dollars approved. There's a possible pathway for us to become durable medical equipment, but FSA is definitely a faster, easier ride.
I have one thank you for a great presentation. I see a real need here, but I'm slightly confused.
Okay.
I see an education that's going to be very different at 6 months versus 5 years. How does that change up as they're on the app? I see a hardware plate that sort of gives feedback to the child based on the education they've learned, but the parent has to fill that with food. And I hear a big problem that actually it's the parent's time. So we haven't solved the time issue. That food still has to be prepared and put there. Can you maybe in a 30-second pitch, how you pull these pieces together?
Okay, what was your first question? Because it was like three-part.
Yeah, well, because
the education.
Your solution is three-part, and I don't know how it comes together.
Yeah, as we discussed earlier, we use AI and machine learning to expand the learning library as they age out and as they learn and show proficiency. We give them quizzes, and we're tracking every learning module that they complete. And as they go through it and comprehension goes up, we'll unlock additional learning modules that goes up in complexity in nutrition literacy.
Are those developed today?
We have a portion of our learning modules. That's a big portion of our raise is going to go towards learning module development. Second part of your question was, what was it? Yeah. How getting good food on the plate to begin with. Yeah, so there are many ways, obviously, to do that. We're not trying to make people make 2-hour dinners. You can certainly go out and buy a dinner and plate it. We're trying to push you away from that fast food model. You can go to Boston Market and get some roasted chicken and get some steamed vegetables. You can throw a frozen bag of vegetables. You can buy pre-marinated chicken. And these are all tips and recommendations that we're providing to parents in the portal as an ease of use. There are ways to get dinner on the table in 15, 20 minutes. Throwing things on sheet pans and popping them out or buying your food. I'm not here to demonize working women, working mothers. I'm a working mother myself. So if you have to buy your dinner out, let's curb it from McDonald's to, maybe it is a Boston Market, or maybe it's Freshie, or maybe it's, any number of these alternate solutions.
Thank you, Malvina. We'll now have Lori Ebenstein with Inclusive Plus.
Hi, I'm Lori, one of the co-founders of Inclusive Plus, and we're working to improve LGBTQ plus health equity through provider education and increased patient access to care. Our healthcare system is failing our LGBTQ plus communities. As society has become more affirming, more people are comfortable self-identifying in the community, with 1 in 4 Gen Z adults now identifying as LGBTQ plus. But our healthcare system has yet to catch up. LGBTQ plus people are more expensive to treat and face worse health outcomes than their non-LGBTQ plus peers. My co-founders and I came together to figure out what was going on and how we could solve this inequity that we saw. We interviewed hundreds of LGBTQ plus folks from across the healthcare ecosystem, and also conducted secondary research. And we identified 2 major but addressable gaps contributing to this inequity. The first is that providers aren't adequately trained in LGBTQ plus health needs. And the second is that patients have no way to assess which providers are actually competent. Only 4.4% of providers strongly agreed that they had adequate training in the needs of the community. And speaking to LGBTQ plus patients, we learned that most of the time they're relying on word of mouth, leveraging free LGBTQ plus focused clinics, even if they're well insured. And so it's no surprise that 73% of LGBTQ plus patients believe their providers aren't competent in their care. Oh, we have a little verifying of Outlook. Okay, we're good. So what this means is that since providers aren't adequately trained and patients have no way to assess which providers are actually competent, we struggle to find the right providers, often then experiencing negative interactions with those providers and ultimately delaying needed care. And that ultimately puts our LGBTQ plus population at risk for worse health outcomes. And that's where Inclusive Plus comes in. We solve both of these issues through our education and our directory. Our education allows clinicians to take tailored education in LGBTQ plus medical and cultural competency, and then our directory allows them to showcase themselves as a vetted and trusted providers, so then our LGBTQ plus communities can find them. A little bit more about how we work. A clinician starts by taking our baseline assessment, which is specifically tailored to that provider's specialty. And we ask questions on both medical and cultural competency. Our assessment then identifies gaps in their knowledge. And based on that, we recommend a tailored curriculum of CE, CME courses. So these are continuing education courses, so providers can use those to fulfill their ongoing requirements. So the idea here is we're not adding additional work to providers' already busy schedule. On top of that, our education is on demand, so they can take it at their leisure, and it's also scalable. Clinicians then, once they've completed their required curriculum, can join our directory and be recognized as a vetted, competent, affirming provider. And we provide value across the healthcare ecosystem. Patients can easily find competent and affirming providers, and we're completely complementary for patients to access our directory. For providers and health systems, we help them attract and retain patients and ultimately provide better care for LGBTQ plus folks and demonstrate an overall commitment to inclusivity. We charge on a per provider per year subscription model between $300 to $600 per provider per year. And we're the only company that's combining education and a vetted directory in this way. We're both creating more educated providers who understand LGBTQ plus health needs, and at the same time helping patients decipher and find those vetted providers. And other people are realizing that we're filling a very important need. We've raised money through the University of Chicago through various programs. We had our first paid pilot with Mindful Care, a mental health care clinic. We've onboarded 37 clinicians to provide feedback, help us iterate on our platform. And we also are really excited about an upcoming UI Health pilot with around 20 of their primary care clinicians, which we'll use to be able to track outcome data around provider improved knowledge, improved comfort for caring for LGBTQ plus folks, as well as patient satisfaction scores. We've built out our education within psychiatry, primary care, other mental health care professionals, as well as cultural education, and we've done that through both our proprietary baseline assessment and then also leveraging existing CME, CEs, continuing medical education. And as we continue to scale, we're developing in-house CME, CEs. We have one on sexual health history that we're getting ready to finalize this month. And as we continue to scale, we'll also be working to launch our directory in Illinois later this month, as well as validating our clinical offering by leveraging that UI Health pilot that I mentioned. As we scale, we'll continue to scale in terms of our geography and our medical specialties, eventually reaching self-insured employers and partnering with payers. $10,000 from this challenge would help us to reach some really key milestones for us before we then go out and raise our bigger pre-seed round. So mentioned some of these, but kicking off our UI Health pilot and making sure it's successful, onboarding another 2 mental health care clinics, accrediting our first course, the sexual health history taking course, so that we can provide CME credit to providers, and then also launching our directory of providers in Illinois. And we're a team built out of clinicians and members of the LGBTQ+ community. I have a background in product management and strategy at CVS Health, as well as some other healthcare startups. And my co-founders round out our clinical rigor. We have a MD and also a clinical pharmacist. Our broader team also rounds out our experience with folks in infectious disease, social work, marketing, sales, and more. We're looking for anyone looking to help us on our mission, specifically health system partners, but really anyone. And we hope that you'll join us on our mission to eliminate healthcare disparities for LGBTQ+ folks.
Again, great presentation there. And so it looks like you're also getting feedback. So let's say somebody that fits this criteria sees a physician. There's feedback that comes back. Is that, how do you know you're being successful in the market?
In terms of the patient-related feedback?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So what we're doing with the University of Illinois' pilot, we're going to be able to track patient satisfaction scores. So we'll be able to see if providers who have gone through our training have better patient satisfaction scores compared to those who don't. And then ongoing, in terms of ongoing kind of feedback past the pilot, we're going to also, it's more of a quality control mechanism, so patients will be able to provide feedback if, say, they have a negative experience with a provider right on our website.
That actually goes to a follow-on that I have. So
Yeah, of course.
Your pilot's going to allow you to sort of see the impact pretty quickly. You're going to train the physician or the clinician, whoever's providing and then there's the normal survey that the patient would fill out, and you will get access. So they're approving that you get access. What's the time horizon and how many people in the pilot? Because that's
Yeah, exactly. So the data sharing aspect is still being finalized. They're looking to get IRB approval, so we're going through that process. We'll definitely have access to the data in terms of like being able to analyze it and conduct it. It's not clear if it's on the UI side or on the Inclusive Plus side in terms of like the raw data. And then we have about 20 clinicians who will be participating in the pilot. Is that answer? Okay.
Is this data, I mean, the questionnaire that you asked them to fill out, right? Is that sort of aimed at medical issues, cultural issues, interpersonal issues? What's behind the questions that allows you to sort of conclude that someone should be certified or not certified?
Yeah, so our, it sounds like you're asking about what we call our baseline assessment. So our baseline assessment, it's 50% cultural competency questions and 50% clinical questions. The cultural questions are things around making sure that they understand gender identity, gender expression, trauma-informed care, how do you introduce yourself with pronouns and things like that. The clinical questions are more clinically specific, so an endocrinologist will get different questions than, say, a psychologist. And then it's a multiple choice assessment that takes about 15 minutes, and it's 14 questions.
Is there a group of clinicians that put these questions together? Where did you come up with this?
Yeah, good question. So how we did it was we basically worked, we talked to LGBTQ plus patients to know what gaps they saw in their providers' knowledge. We talked to providers to understand what topic areas were important, and then we also conducted research to analyze what healthcare disparities and what topics were important that are out there. And then based on that, we worked with a medical question writer whose job it is to do medical question writing, who helped us make sure like our questions were actually, asking the right things, phrased in a way that we're not making them unnecessarily tricky, but actually getting at the root cause of what we're trying to test. And then we got a lot of feedback from clinicians who are experts within LGBTQ plus care, as well as clinicians who are, moderately experts in LGBTQ plus care.
This is under development now.
It's developed. So we have our baseline assessment developed so it includes primary care questions, for mental health care professionals and for those cultural competency questions.
And the revenue model, real quick.
Yes.
You walk through that again.
Yeah, it's a subscription-based model, so we charge per provider per year, and it's either the individual provider paying for it or the health system. And it's between $300 to $600 per provider per year.
And you're showing the value of that based on the community that they'll be serving. And so that's the value statement to them, to spend the $600 or whatever.
Yeah, so it's attracting, good question. So it's attracting more patients to their practice, helping them also provide better care to patients as well.
Because they go in the directory.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. So it's the value both from the education itself and then also the directory.
Do you really expect to get picked up maybe by some of the bigger CME names once you build out this very important niche marketplace where they may not have? Or do you believe that Inclusive will remain standalone?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think both are potential avenues for us. I do see an opportunity where I don't see us getting picked up completely by a bigger CME, but maybe we would license one of our education courses so that they can offer it then to even more providers, and that would help also us impact and train more providers out there. Good. Anything else? Olivia summoning us. Thank you.
Thank you. And so finally, we will have Samantha Berry-Minkhouse with Monark Health.
Thank you. It's tough to go last. Those are all amazing. Samantha Berry, co-founder of Monark Health, a digital cognitive behavioral treatment program for kids with medical conditions and health concerns. And I'm a pediatric psychologist by training. So what that means is I have my PhD in clinical psychology and then advanced training through a postdoctoral fellowship, specifically in targeting physical health outcomes for kids with medical conditions and health concerns. So I want to give an example of what pediatric psychology looks like in practice. I met Jonathan when he was 14 years old and struggling to manage his type 1 diabetes. His A1C was high, which meant he felt sick all the time. He was missing a lot of school. His parents had taken him off of the baseball team, which was really important to him. And he had had 2 severe episodes of diabetic ketoacidosis and hospitalizations that year, which can almost always be entirely avoidable with appropriate adherence to the diabetes regimen. We worked together to target skill building to improve adherence. We targeted communication training to improve parent-child diabetes-related conflict, and we targeted diabetes burnout in order to improve motivation and engagement in his routine. After 3 months of working together, Jonathan's A1C had come down in a clinically meaningful way. He was back in school, he was back playing sports, and he didn't have a single additional hospitalization in the years that followed. We know that, like Jonathan, there are many kids out there that have a range of conditions who benefit from pediatric psychology interventions. It benefits their health, there's a cost reduction, it benefits their mental health, their life, so much so that most medical associations recommend integrated pediatric psychology care as best practice or standard of care. We also know that this effective service is not equitably accessed. So this is a headache example here that's showing the typical patient journey. So in best case scenario, this child with headache gets their care at a top-rated children's hospital, in which case they may have access to an integrated pediatric psychologist within the hospital system. That is gold standard. Unfortunately, though, for the vast majority of kids, they're not getting their care at a top-rated children's hospital, so they're not going to have access to an integrated pediatric psychologist. They'll need to look into the community, call their insurance provider, and they're very, very unlikely to find a provider with this expertise in the community and network. They'll then look at self-pay options where it's also incredibly rare, but also incredibly expensive, so up to $400 per session out of pocket. So the vast majority of kids are not accessing this standard of care. And because of that, they're having increased medical interventions, decreased quality of life, worse symptoms, potentially worse health outcomes. Zooming in on the Bay Area, where there are 660,000 kids with headache impacting their lives, there are only enough providers with adequate expertise to see 3,000, which leaves 657,000 kids unseen. On a national scale, that's 43 million kids not accessing the standard of care, and that's in headache alone. So at Monarch, our mission is to make effective pediatric psychology interventions accessible, affordable, and easy. We're building a platform that will give kids across the country access to live video therapy and evidence-based pediatric psychology interventions, coupled with electronic tools and condition-specific resources, all streamlined and integrated into their care. We want to scale what we know is already effective, and we want to do this through standardized training programs and manualized treatment packages, where we're able to increase the pediatric psychology workforce through master's level providers. More providers will mean more access. We also know that there's latent demand. We've heard time and time again from our provider colleagues their incredible frustration around not being able to access this service. So we know we'll have eager referring provider partners. We also have an adaptive revenue strategy. So ideally, we envision moving to a values-based payment model because of how robust this treatment package will be, but we're also well suited to begin in a fee-for-service space with enhanced reimbursement and a clear path to profitability. Here are some of the other folks that are doing great work in this general space, but absolutely no one is targeting this very specific and very important population of kids with medical conditions and health concerns. And what's notable is that there's very limited clinical translatability from adult health psychology to pediatric health psychology and from child mental health psychology to pediatrics. So we're really uniquely positioned to make this happen. We are 3 pediatric psychologists across multiple disciplines who have all worked our entire careers in top-rated children's hospitals. We know the power of these interventions, and we also know how difficult it is to get them into the lives of kids. We're very early stage. Our next step is to pilot the interventions that we've been piloting our entire careers through Monarch with a very basic technology build-out within the next couple of months, followed by a pilot with master's level providers, and should be ready to fundraise and build out a more customized technology from there. Our plan is to begin in the state of California, where our professional network is, and then to phase 2 pilot into these 39 medium blue states, which are SIPAC states and have licensure reciprocity. And our ask to folks here is if you're a medical system or a payer and you'd be interested in partnering with us through these pilots, we would absolutely love to discuss. We know that there's an effective intervention out there that is life-changing and health-changing for kids, and our mission is really to do everything possible to get it into the lives of as many as possible. Thank you. Yes. So our plan is to train, so currently PhD level providers do this work. Our plan is to train master's level providers to do this really specific, these really specific pediatric psychology interventions and to employ them through Monark Health. And so kids will be able to access through the Monarch program these providers from home.
These providers would have their own practice, plus you would employ them for additional.
So a lot of folks in this space do have contracted providers. Our plan is to salary and benefit hire on providers who go through a very specific and rigorous training program in order to be able to offer this service. So our plan is both didactic training, titrated supervision, some subspecialty rotations, which looks a lot like what it looks like in level residency where you're rotating through different clinics, you're working with different subspecialties, and then you're ultimately choosing a track. And then I'm a diabetes psychologist specifically, so I only see kids with diabetes. You would eventually choose a subspecialty and work specifically with kids across the country who have that condition and need a provider who can address their specific concerns. Certainly kids with diabetes can see any number of mental health providers in the community. They're likely not going to be effective if the concern is specific to their diabetes.
So let me understand. Yeah. So let me understand. So is the provider choosing to enroll in this and get this credential? How does this?
So they're hired on. So they are providers that would be hired on through Monarch, salaried providers who work for Monarch and deliver services through Monarch.
But if I heard you correctly,
Yes.
you are addressing an issue of access and the number of folks who could provide this level. And so my question to you is we see a lot of opportunity in sort of, how do you triage before a specialist sees someone? So maybe you can put other individuals in between and they can handle certain problems so the specialist doesn't have to see them. How do you train these folks that you're thinking about in a way that you, who went on and got various levels of expertise, and it doesn't seem like something where you can sort of triage to say, oh, you start here and then you move up. How do you handle that?
Yeah, so we know that master's level providers can do these interventions. Actually, a lot of the evidence base, a lot of the randomized controlled trials that support the pediatric psychology literature are done by master's level providers in a research context before they go on to go get their PhDs. It's just that the training opportunities that exist in our current hospital system are really just for PhD level providers to go on and serve the community. So the year that I completed fellowship for a diabetes psychology, there were 6 available fellowships. There's just really very limited training. But it is not, we don't believe that it's a complex training to give. Master's level mental health providers can absolutely learn how to do this work. And it then creates space off of wait lists for PhD level providers who are integrated in a hospital setting. Rather than folks waiting a year to see them, the less acute folks that can be seen through Monarch can do so, leaving the more complex kids who really should, as you're saying, kind of move up in subspecialty care to a PhD level provider, will be able to get in to see them a lot quicker.
And then I saw that in your competition model, you had that bottom square that was pretty wide open there. Do you see any differentiation where, because they might go cross-market, right? And, what compels them from not going into your market, or what advantage do you have stopping them from coming to the market or get there first?
So there's really, really limited clinical translatability. So an adult service is not likely to have the expertise to be able to provide pediatric care. It's really a completely different subspecialty. I have many health psychologist friends who work with adults, and what we do is very unique and very different. The same is absolutely true coming from the mental health space into the pediatric psychology space. I think a lot of folks, I know I spent a lot of time at the beginning of the presentation kind of going through like what we are and what the problem is. There's a lot of often confusion between mental health providers or child psychologists and pediatric psychologists. And it's a completely different space and different intervention type.
Got it. Then you would put the technology around that to support those people to ask the right questions, which would be a technology that they'd have to sort of rebuild in their systems.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a completely different intervention and different types of services. And just really quickly, I will, if I have the time, Olivia. I went a little too far. So we're set up well to start in kind of, as I said, the fee-for-service space. And I don't know if you can see this slide particularly well because of the colors, but ideally, there's a more extensive intervention aside from just the weekly appointments, right? There's between session check-ins, there's ongoing symptom tracking, medication reminders. There's a coping toolbox that's really specific to the child and to their condition. And And our providers are interfacing with the medical system, with other providers delivering the child's care. And there are additional resources. So as you said, like lower non-licensed folks who are doing educational liaison support, transition coordination, and who are engaging the child and the family in a different way. Thank you.
Thank you to Hello? Okay. Thank you all so much, and thank you to our fantastic finalists. Now we will hear from Dr. Ige, Commissioner of the Chicago Department of Public Health, to deliver her keynote address.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yes, I am Dr. Simbo Ige. I am a public health physician, and I have the privilege right now of serving as the commissioner for the Chicago Department of Public Health. And it has been I wanted to come early and listen to, the cool things that are happening. I am not in any way a technology, too technology savvy a little, but my background is in health equity. I've worked in the health equity space for almost 20 years now, first in the global context and then across many states in the United States, and now in the city of Chicago. And my interest has always been in figuring out why we continue to have the disparities that we have in a country that is one of the richest in the world. Now, there are some very tough questions that we wrestle with every day. Why is it that in the city of Chicago, the third biggest city in the United States, with remarkable resources, we have 35 healthcare systems in the city of Chicago. We have more healthcare systems here than in 30% of the states in this country, in this one city. We have more than 100 federally qualified health centers that their business model is safety net. Their job is to serve underserved communities. Yet, as at the end of 2023, when we looked at how well and how long people live in the city of Chicago, this is how the lines go. Divergent, not convergent. We started to track health equity using life expectancy gap as an outcome in 2012. 12 years later, the gap we have is wider than when we started. How is that possible? Every single healthcare institution that I engage with has a health equity initiative, right? Yeah. We have all kinds of professors and research and things in health equity. Yet, for communities of color, especially Black communities, for people with disability, for LGBTQ plus communities, we continue to see divergent health outcomes. Why? Why is it that in 2024, in a country with one of the most creative, innovative healthcare systems in the entire world, we spend more on healthcare in this country than in any other country in the world, that our healthcare outcome is rated 35th out of 37 OECD countries? Why? It doesn't matter what outcomes we look at, maternal mortality, infant mortality, all of those indicators of well-being and functioning of the healthcare system. Health outcomes from breast cancer was very similar. There were no racial disparities. But when mammogram became a thing, we started to see things go this way. Why is that? So every time we develop innovations and solutions and trainings and systems without that lens of health equity, we tend to have that. It is not sufficient to develop solutions without a consideration of our audience. There is no time when we have developed solutions, trainings, and technology and interventions and investigations and tests without that consideration of who am I serving, that we have landed at a destination that brings people together instead of divergent. So that has been my work for 20 years, trying to figure out this conundrum. How, in the midst of all of these resources, we continue to have these outcomes that we have. And my hope today is that I can challenge you a little as we think about these solutions, that we center health equity. Now, what is health equity? We always talk about fair and equitable opportunities. We talk about opportunities. But what does that mean in a country that is as diverse as ours? What does fair and equitable mean? In a city like Chicago, what does it mean to have fair opportunities? Some other people define it as, building a bridge with no barriers. That if I were to start my journey, whether I am black or brown or blue or yellow, or whether I have a disability or not a disability, and whatever my gender identity or sexual orientation is, that I will get to the same destination at the same time. So what kind of bridges do we need to build to allow that to happen? The bridges we're building right now, some of them have hurdles that make it harder for people who have certain characteristics or certain demographics to get to the journey, to the end of the journey at the same time, in the same state as others. And that's what we've been trying to figure out at the Chicago Department of Public Health, that when we zoom out, we are not seeing the kind of health outcomes that we have. And yet, we know that inequities can be reversed. We saw with COVID that when we started our journey this way, we started seeing things going divergent. But at some point, we figured things out, and we started to course correct. And eventually, we landed at a place where, and I should have brought some charts with you. We look at the mortality from COVID, and we started out this way. And from 2022 towards 2023, we closed that gap for all ethnicities. So we know that it is possible to close these gaps. That's one example. Another example is we look at tobacco. It's been 40 years of trying to address tobacco. But we look at things over time, and they started to converge and converge and converge for all races and ethnicities. So again, a testament that change is possible. We have seen certain communities progress at a rate that they have caught up and overtaken other communities in some health outcomes, including, some of the cancer rates and some of the cardiovascular disease rates. So again, change is possible. So in this city of Chicago, when we look at life expectancy, there are communities that have continued to increase in their life expectancy steadily over the last 12 years. And yet there are also communities that have not just stagnated, they have declined. Less worse than things were 12 years ago, and it's not COVID. So these are the questions that we are wrestling with. Now, what are some of the things that we have discovered are the barriers that if we want to build these bridges must consider the barriers that are on the way and how we eliminate those barriers. So I try to keep things simple. Health equity requires that we prevent what is preventable. If it is preventable, it is inequitable. Number two, if it is due to factors that are outside the control of the individual, it is an inequity. It is not just a disparity. A disparity is their differences. But are those differences preventable? If those differences are preventable, and they are due to factors outside of the control of the individual, then it goes from being a disparity to being an inequity. And that's what I want us to keep in mind. What solutions are we going to develop to ensure that what is preventable, and that it is not just based on an individual's action? Because there are certain factors that make individual actions harder for certain communities relative to other communities. So I have heard a lot today about healthcare access, which is very important. Can someone guess, if we were to fix all the healthcare access issues in the city of Chicago, how much do you think that contributes to health outcomes? Yes, ma'am. 80? Not quite. Any other? I'm sorry? 20%. So 20% of health outcomes is due to access to healthcare. It is very important, but it is less than a fifth of the determinants of health. Everything else are due to factors outside of the healthcare system. So that's one of the things that we have discovered, that we have, and when I say we, I mean that our public health system, our healthcare system, have centered healthcare as the primary solution, but it is just one of the many different factors that influence health outcomes. And that is why in a city like Chicago with so many healthcare systems, we still have disparate or inequitable health outcome. It is important, it is necessary, but not sufficient. Now, when we look at access to care, there is something I call the G.I. Joe fallacy. People say it is information that is the barrier. Is it though? If I know where Rush is, if I know where Lori is, if I know that these are the services that UIC provide, does that make me access and use those services? Sometimes, but not always. In fact, in our department, we chase people down and say we have all this information and we have flyers and we go door knocking and we say to people we have all the screening tools and we have vaccines and we have this and we have that. And people say what? No, thank you, I'll pass. So information is important, again, not sufficient. I'm still, talking about healthcare access. What have we found? That trust is important, that the messenger is important. We have 70,000 health queries on Google every day. People will go to Google to find out information rather than go into a provider. So we have the PhDs, we have the MDs, we have the FAACP. We have all these letters behind our names, and people say no. It is possible to trust an individual and not trust the system. Trust is a big barrier that we have found. And that is work in progress because it depends on who the messenger is. That's something we have to reckon with as provider. I'm a medical doctor. I came up from the time when, if I become a doctor, everybody's going to listen to me. I like to tell people what to do. It's like, okay, good luck to you. Now, people don't care about those things. People will rather go to their next door neighbor who says, I took ketamine for XYZ, and they think that that person has more relevant information. Why? Because they feel like that person has nothing at stake and is telling them the truth. So those are some of the limitations we're seeing now that we need to solve for to accelerate health equity. Trusted messengers. Who are the purveyors of information? And how do we get information to the right people to get it to those who want to hear it? I talked about access and that uptake of services is more than just the availability. What are some of the barriers to access? Now, another thing that we have discovered is that access varies. One second. Social determinants of health. How many people have heard about it? Yes. Yes. Now, social determinants account for the 80% of health outcomes. Why? Let's say I heard somebody say I'm a diabetes expert. So let's say I am diagnosed with diabetes and you gave me this prescription and I saw Plateful and all of the other solutions and say, you have to eat this kind of meals and you have to do this much exercise. Now, if this person lives in Roseland, and I have been there, now Roseland is considered a food desert. You have to travel between 1 to 2 miles to get to a grocery store. So this person will not only need to travel about an hour or so to the nearest health facility, but they will also have to travel to get the kind of meals that we are recommending. So what do we see? We write all the prescription, we give all the education, they nod and say, yes, doctor, and they come back the next time with their HbA1c in the wrong direction. Why? Because we did not take the time to find out the context in which people live. Now, how do we overcome some of those barriers? They are not within the purview of the healthcare system. You cannot, as a doctor, write a prescription for someone to skip the transportation line. We don't have those solutions yet. So what do? We partner with those who do and say, how do we bring services and resources closer to people? And there are some innovative practices like veggie RX programs and bringing some of these grocery stores even into the hospital context. I've been at Swedish. I've seen some of the other cool things that people are doing where they have a refrigerator in their lobby so people on their way out can pick up a supply for up to a week. Those are creative solutions helping to eliminate the barriers to services. Some folks have developed, solutions to help people get transportation and come for their appointments and reminder system, etc. But the social determinants of health are huge. Opportunities for exercise, opportunities for some of the resources you need to stay healthy are important consideration in our development of solutions. Now, healthcare quality. So let's say everybody, there are 10 people here, all of different, people with disability, people LGBTQ, people with disability have a particularly challenging time getting support. And we say, you know what, let's line up all this healthcare system and let's send all these 10 people to those healthcare systems. They will get very different experiences. For mental health, you will get very different experiences. For cardiovascular, services, very different experiences. I was like, have the standards changed? No. Why is it that depending on what I look like, the language that I speak, the accent that I have, my ability status, my LGBTQ status, my experience of healthcare will vary? And I know that some of the solutions here today have explored some of those issues. Healthcare quality. We have worked very hard. We have done implicit bias training. We have done cultural sensitivity training. It's been on for many, many years. And yet, we are not seeing those outcomes changing. Why? Because implicit bias is what? Is implicit. It is unconscious. If it was conscious, we will not have it. It is unconscious. I have yet to meet someone and said, you are biased, and the person says, yes, I am. They'll say, absolutely not. How do we make people see things that are unconscious? How do we resolve it? By putting policies, systems in place that override the natural tendency. We are humans. We all default to certain behaviors, and we don't even recognize it. And the solutions to those things are not human-based interventions. They are systemic interventions that override that natural tendency and say, if this is what needs to happen. So we're looking for some of those kinds of solutions that say, if I have bias in interviewing, is my solution training the interviewers to override the unconscious bias? It could be, but not consistently so. But if we have a policies that say on every interview panel, this is what the composition must be, and this is how individuals will be assessed, that is not subjective, that is objective, we suddenly saw a reversal in the number of people. We didn't do a single training. We just changed what the composition will be. So there are certain systematic, structural changes that are necessary to accelerate and sustain health equity. So my chart to you all today is, as we explore the innovative strategies, we often do not get to that health equity destination if we don't challenge ourselves to a higher standard and say, what are the barriers that we need to eliminate that are not just at the individual level, that considers systemic and structural barriers, and that looks at eliminating things beyond just the individual level. What time? Yes. So I want to thank all the folks who are thinking through these issues, and also, end with a charge. I am glad to see, the LGBTQ plus community in our consideration, but I also want us to challenge us to think about people with disability. And even in infectious diseases, we see disparate and inequitable health outcomes in those spaces that are concerning and that want people to be aware of. And we also know that, there are others who are in the margins, children, older adults, who don't get the same kind of support and resources and societal attention that is necessary to really understand what the barriers are that they are facing. And finally, end again with a reminder that we have to look beyond providers as the only source of information and how we can equip other trusted messengers with information. Misinformation is rampant. People will choose 20 other sources of information rather than the healthcare system. That is a challenge that we're facing right now that we need to deal with. And how do we build trust in institutions that will enable the uptake of the services that we know are essential to help keep people healthy. So thank you all very much. I know it's 4 p.m., everybody's tired and drowsy, but I also wanted to see if there were a few questions that I could respond to, and I will be out of your face. Yes.
Would like your thoughts today. The Biden administration passed a historic rule, the same as physical health coverage. Your thoughts?
It's been a long journey. I am an optimist, and I'm very excited to be able to say, well, I'm alive and well when this happened. I always say the triangle of health, physical, mental, and social, and that we've finally come to a stage where mental health is now, equated to physical health. I think it's an important development, because what we have seen is that these things are inextricably linked. If we don't solve for the social issues that people have, mental health and physical health cannot get better. And for those who have chronic severe mental illness, we find that most of them, 70% of them, die from chronic illnesses. And for those who have chronic illnesses, again, 7 out of 10 have mental health issues as well. So we cannot, we cannot solve for these things individually. We're doing this whack-a-mole. And so I'm very excited that we have finally started to integrate some of these services. So we are hoping that that will infuse some additional resources into the mental health space, but it's a big milestone. Well, severe mental illness, yes. And we say that because many of those with severe mental illness will need, support. They have a social disadvantage and they need that additional support. So yes, disability, but officially it's not always recognized as such. Any other thoughts, questions, comments, disagreements? Yes.
Real quick, if you can speak into the microphone.
Oh yeah, sure. Can you give us some concrete examples or something we as individuals and entrepreneurs can do to both put awareness to this health equity and what we can do to counter it?
Yes. I think there is a real need to elevate the data, move away from the subjective space. Many times, this is my own experience, that people relate with information based on the source of that information. And like, oh, because you're a black person and you're saying these things, I'm not going to relate with it. Or because you're a white person and you're saying this thing, there's no truth in it. But health equity is a challenge to us all. And I think that everybody needs to be equipped with the data and the information to really understand what is going on here. This is a country of over 330 million people. If everybody was functioning at their best, what do you think this country will be like? It will be phenomenal. I mean, you watch the Olympics? Like, if everybody was performing at that level, does it matter what color they are or what ability status they are? But if we all don't embrace this as a challenge for all of us, and it is a problem of some group and not some other group, then I don't think we'll ever get there. Because health equity has often been seen as a problem of the people of color, who feel like we have to be the ones championing it and helping people to see it. But if everybody understood how having an equitable society supports all of us, then I think that we will move along faster. And if there are entrepreneurs who can help, package and demystify this and help people see the value and the benefit of living in a society where everyone has fair opportunity. I like to use an example. I have two sons. My youngest son is more of the cook and likes to experiment and all of that. His older brother is like very basic. So he goes and makes a sandwich for himself. Peanut butter, jelly. I'm good. And then all of a sudden he sees his brother who's like putting his cucumbers and tomatoes and like really working this sandwich. And all of a sudden he wants that sandwich. And it's like, okay, dude, you had your basic sandwich. Now I have spent the time and energy to create this sandwich. Can there be peace? No. 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 They will argue back and forth. If you don't see better opportunities, you're happy. But you cannot be in a context where some people have and some people don't, and there will be peace. It is impossible. It's anti-human nature. So it is impossible for some folks to live in Roseland and not have anything. And you expect them that they will be happy? No, there will be no rest for anyone. So it is in our best interest to help elevate why these things are of a mutual benefit, and it's not seen as doing some people a favor. It's a mutual benefit for us all to live in a society where we feel safe, where we feel seen, where we feel heard, and where we have an opportunity for our own, gourmet sandwiches. That's what I think. So I think that can be a space to help people really understand, unpack this issue, and not leave it to a few, people who are those with the lived experiences as the only, voices in the room. Yes, more? You're tired of me? Okay, I will be gone. Yes. Yes, thank you, everyone.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Aige. So we are still waiting a few more minutes for the judges to deliberate on the panel, but everyone that is physically in the room in person with us today, you are more than welcome to begin making your way back for some refreshments. And everyone virtually, we'll just have you all kind of stand by and tune back in closer to about, I want to say in about 10 minutes. We're hoping they'll be back around 4, but it might take them a little bit to walk back into the room. But thank you all for joining us, and we'll be back online shortly. Thank you.
So thank you all for joining us. We just want to share thank you to our review and selection committee, thank you to our finalists, thank you to our judges, and just thank you all of you in person and online for joining us for this final showcase. And now we are excited to announce the winner. It is Monark Health of So they receive a $10,000 cash prize and also a year-long Matter membership. Again, you all did amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, and please continue to enjoy refreshments. Thank you all.